Well, hello everyone and welcome to Cabin Fever Crochet. I'm Helene and I'm back with a brand new pattern and tutorial. First, I want to thank Arcane Fiberworks for supplying the yarn for today's project as part of a designer partnership / collaboration. And there's a 10% off your first order coupon code in the drop-down description section, along with links to Arcane's website and all other related content and mentions. And in that same section, I've also provided you with a timestamp reference guide. For the main body of the pattern, I used the multicolored colorway in Silent Night, and for the border, that gorgeous brown and chestnut, and to finish it off in the Midnight Blue. This is an 80% superwash merino wool, 20% nylon in a DK weight. This shawl also works up beautifully in a worsted weight, would be just as nice in a fingering, but of course you use whatever type and weight of yarn that you like. Now I am working on a written pattern, had really hoped to have it finished and up by the time this tutorial was ready, but I was sick for the past couple of weeks, still not quite 100%, was not easy concentrating on anything. So as soon as it's ready, the link to my Etsy shop for this written pattern will be in the drop-down description section here, and I'll go ahead and make a quick announcement video also letting you know. Now the written pattern itself is more intermediate, but this tutorial here is very easy, and as always I take you through step by step. This starts with a pretty quick 6-row setup and goes into an easy 1-row repeat with a 5-row border to finish it off. And a bonus feature with this design is you get an 8-stitch increase per row, which helps the work grow really fast. Really isn't designed to go all the way down to your rear anyway, but if you have more yarn, you can certainly make it bigger to have more fuller coverage. I used the 2 full hanks of Silent Night at 218 yards each, with just a small amount of the chestnut brown and the midnight blue, with plenty left over. The height from top to bottom after it was lightly blocked measures 17.5 inches tall, 44.45 centimeters, and about 58 inches wide, 148 centimeters. For a more fuller shawl and an average size, I would say 3 skeins or hanks will be plenty, and if you are larger or smaller than that, then you can gauge from there. To create a more fuller size shawl, work the main part of your pattern to that of your wingspan from fingertip to fingertip or beyond, and then add your border. If you want a little more mid-size, such as I've shown here, then work to approximately mid-palm and then add your border. All right, now let's get started. Okay, let's start with supplies. You will need 5 stitch markers, and if you have enough to create 2 sets of 2 in different colors as shown here, that'll help you out a lot as your work grows to separate out the 2 increases to the right of center from the 2 increases to the left of center, which are worked in the reverse order to create a mirror image. All right, so this is going to make a lot more sense over the next several rows that we work together. Plus the 1 stitch marker to mark the right side of your work. A row counter to keep track of your work, and 1 hook size. Now you can go up 1 more hook size for the beginning chain, but it's a small chain, so you can just make those stitches just a little bit longer than your usual. It should be just fine, and that's just to keep that beginning neckline from being over tightened. And as far as hook sizes go, I suggest starting with what's recommended on the ball band, and you can go up or down to your own taste. Crocheting tension and might depend on the yarn that you're using. All right, I brought this prototype out just to give you a little bit more of a visual so you can see what your piece is supposed to look like, how the work grows. So here's the back neckline, which I did revise a little bit for the final version. And now we have our 2 shells running down your center back. You have 2 increases to the right of center and 2 increases to the left, plus the increases on each side. So the 2 increases each on the side of center, each one of those gives you 1 double crochet per row more for each section. So that's how the work grows. You get this fanned out shape to create the crescent shape of the entire piece. And then we get 2 double crochets more on each end. So that's 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So go ahead, make a slip knot, leave enough tail to weave in your ends nice and tidy when we finish the work. All right, and for row 1, we're going to make a chain of 18, okay? 18 chains. And now half double crochet in the second chain from the hook, working into the back bump, that raised bump in the center of your stitch. Make 1 half double crochet. The first skipped chain does not count as a stitch. And then place 1 half double crochet in each chain all the way across, with 2 half double crochets in the very last. Okay? 2 half double crochets in the last chain. At the end of row 1, you should have 18 half double crochets. Now to begin row 2, our second setup row, chain 3, which counts as your first double crochet here and throughout. We're just going to work all double crochets now. All right, turn your work, place 2 double crochet in the beginning half double crochet. That is your end increase. All right, and now you will work 1 double crochet in each of the next 2 half double crochets, and 2 double crochets in the next. Okay, you're going to repeat this sequence we just worked with 1 double crochet in each of the next 2, 2 double crochets in the next. All right, 1 in each of the next 2, 2 double crochets in the next. So now we're going to work 1 double crochet in each of the next 4 double crochets. Which is your center back. So the sequence with the 1 in each of the 2, 2 in the next, 1 in each of the next 2, 2 in the next, that is the right side of your work with your 2 increases to the right side of center. So now what we're going to do is work a mirror image of these stitches on the left side of center, starting with 2 double crochets in the next, 1 double crochet in each of the next 2, 2 double crochets in the next, 1 double crochet in each of the next 2, 3 double crochets in the last half double crochet at the end. And remember, your chain 1, and this is the bottom of your beginning chain, and that is that extra skipped chain, so do not work into that. And here is the top of your last half double crochet. So work 3 double crochets in that stitch, and now turn it over, mark your center, or your right side, excuse me, just put a stitch somewhere in there to mark the right side of your work. Okay. At the end of row 2 you will have 26 double crochets. Alright, so now get your 4 stitch markers ready. We're going to begin row 3. With a chain 3 as your first double crochet. Turn your work, place 2 double crochets in that beginning double crochet, and place 1 double crochet in each of the next 4 double crochets. Which brings you up to your first set of the 2 double crochets in the same stitch. The stitch to the right, your first of the 2, place 2 double crochets as the first increase to the right of center, and now take a stitch marker and place that in the first double crochet of those 2 you just made. Alright, now we're going to work 1 double crochet in each of the next 3, which takes us up to the next set of 2 double crochets. Alright, 1 double crochet in each of the next 3, and again place 2 double crochets in the next, and the first double crochet of those 2 together. Take your second stitch marker and place it in the first of those 2 new double crochets you just made. 1 double crochet in each of the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, 1 double crochet in each of the next 6 double crochets. And now in that second double crochet of the third set of 2 is to the left of center, and we're going to place 2 double crochets in that second double crochet. All right, there's 1 and 2, and now grab your stitch marker and place that in the second double crochet that you just made. Okay. Now work 1 double crochet in each of the next 3, two double crochets in the second double crochet of those 2 together, and again take your 4th stitch marker, place that in the second double crochet you just made. Those mark your 4 increases. Now work 1 double crochet in each of the next 4 double crochets across to the end. And place 3 double crochets in the top of your turning chain 3. So the 1, 2, your third chain up, that's your turning chain. So you work into the top. of that chain through both that front and back loop. 1, 2, 3. At the end of row 3, you should have 34 double crochets. We are increasing each row by 8. So with each new row, you will gain 8 more stitches. And now for row 4, completing the last row of the all double crochets. And looking at this, I might go down to a 5/8 millimeter hook, and probably just depends how much warmth you want, if you want the stitches closer together or not. I might do that. I'll have to see how it works up after my first couple of shell rows. This does go pretty quickly, so it really doesn't hurt to do like a gauge or test swatch just to see if you like how it is playing out. Row 4, chain 3, turn your work, place 2 double crochets as always in that same beginning double crochet, and now we're just going to place 1 stitch in each across up to the first stitch marker. Again, 2 double crochets in the first marked stitch, which is the double crochet to the right in the set of 2. Place your stitch marker into the first double crochet of those 2 you just made, and work across 1 double crochet in each up to your second stitch marker. And this is to build the number of stitches we need for our shell repeats. So that's the second of the 2. Place 2 double crochets into that second marked stitch. Pop your stitch marker back into the first that you just made. 1 double crochet in each of the next all the way across up to your third stitch marker on the left side of center, creating a mirror image of the 2 increases we worked on the right side of center. Up to my second stitch marker. So place 2 double crochets in that marked stitch, which is your second double crochet of those 2 together. Stitch marker back into the second of those 2 you just made. Work across 1 double crochet in each up to your last stitch marker. And 2 double crochets in the marked stitch. Again, the second double crochet of the 2 together. And place your stitch marker and again the second double crochet you just made. 1 double crochet in each across with 3 double crochets into the last, which is the top of your turning chain 3. Your stitch count at the end of row 4, you should have 42 double crochets. Your stitch count is very important. This sets us up for our shell stitches. So your 3 in the top of your chain 3. Okay, so that completes our setup to begin our shells. Okay, so for row 5, okay, I left this last stitch marker out because it comes up quickly. It's easy to see and it's slipping out anyway. As the work grows though, I really highly recommend leaving your stitch markers in because like I said, it's easy to skip over them. Row 5, first shell row, chain 3 and turn. 2 double crochets in the first, skip the next 3 double crochets. We're going to work a shell all into the same stitch. Okay, so skip 3. Shell consists of 2 double crochets, chain 1, 2 double crochets. All right, and again skip 3, place a shell in the next, 2 double crochets, chain 1, 2 double crochets all into that same stitch. Now we are going to work our increase. Here we are up to our first set of 2. Place 2 double crochets into that first stitch, and now take your stitch marker, put it back into the first double crochet you just made in that set of 2. 1 double crochet into the next. And now we are going to repeat this last sequence again. Skip the next 3 double crochets, shell into the next, 2 double crochets, chain 1, 2 double crochets into the same stitch, and we're again up to our second stitch marker now, and we will work our increase. 2 double crochets in that marked stitch, one double crochet in the next, stitch marker in the first of those 2 double crochets in that set of 2. Okay. And now working across the center, we are going to skip the next 3, place another shell in the next, that's your 2 double crochet, chain 1, 2 double crochets, and again skip the next 3, shell in the next, 2 double crochets, chain 1, 2 double crochets, which brings us up to our next increase sequence. And because again we are mirroring what we did on the other side, where we worked the 2 double crochets together followed by 1 double crochet, now we're going to reverse that by working 1 double crochet into the next and 2 double crochets into the marked stitch. Okay. And that keeps everything balanced and even, and the growth with the increases off to the sides to create that crescent shape. And again, put your stitch marker in the second double crochet you just made this time. And again, skip the next 3 double crochets, shell in the next, and just as we did, repeating this last sequence, place 1 double crochet in the next, 2 2 double crochet in the last marked stitch. Put your stitch marker back into that second double crochet of the 2 you just made. Okay. So skip the next 3, shell in the next, skip the next 3, shell in the next, which is the last double crochet before your chain 3. And 3 double crochets in the top of your turning chain 3. And those can get a little squished down anyway. That's why I like to make them just a little bit longer. Again, you know, not oversized, not sloppy, but even just enough to be consistent with the rest of our stitches. Okay, 3 double crochet in the last, and this will all work out as our work grows. And at the end of row 5, you should have 8 shells with our increases at each end. And you have the 2 increases on each side of the center. The center we have 2 shell stitches going right down the center. And now to begin our repeat row 6. Chain 3 and turn. Place 2 more double crochets in that beginning double crochet. And now we are going to work 1 double crochet in each of the next 2 up to our shell. So as you're working, don't accidentally mistake any of these 4 double crochets in each shell as independent double crochets in the pattern separate from the shell. Always going to have the 4 double crochets that make up your shell. So 1 double crochet in each of the next 2. Now we have, you see our increase. That's what gets us the width at the beginning. Now you skip over the 2 double crochets of the shell. You're going to work in the chain 1 space of the shell. So for every shell you make with each new row, you're always working in each of the chain 1 spaces. Alright, so now you jump over, place a shell in the chain 1 space of this shell, 2 double crochets, chain 1, 2 double crochets, okay, 1 shell on the next shell, chain 1, 2 double crochets. Okay. Now you're going to skip the last 2 double crochets of the shell. You jump over to your first stitch marker, place 2 double crochets for your increase in the first, stitch marker back into the first of the 2 you just made, and now work 1 double crochet in each of the next 2. Shell into the next shell, okay. You're up to your second stitch marker, so that's how we know it's time for another increase. 2 double crochets in that marked stitch. 1 double crochet in each of the next 2. Shell in the chain 1 space of this next shell. Shell in the chain 1 space of the next shell. Okay. You're up to your next sequence mirrored across. Okay, so we work the right side. Now we have those 2 in the center. Now we're on the left side of center, so our sequence is reversed for our increased section. Now we work 1 double crochet in each of the next 2. Okay. 2 in the marked stitch. Okay. Placing your stitch marker back into that second stitch you just made. And now you go right over into the center, that chain 1 space of your shell, and place a shell. All right, and again we have our increase section. 1 double crochet in each of the next 2. Two double crochets in that last marked stitch, which is the second of your set of 2 double crochets together. Place your 2, and again your last stitch marker goes back into that second double crochet you just made, and now we're going to place a shell in the chain 1 space in each of the next 2 shells. Okay. Skip the last 2 double crochets of that shell. Now you have your 3 stitches left. We're going to place 1 in each of the next 2, just like we did at the beginning. And now you put 3 in the top of your turning chain 3. Yay, now we have finished our 6th and final setup row, and now to begin row 7, which is our 1 row repeat for the body of the work. Okay, and that will bring us back to the right side of the work. See, we're on the wrong side, or the inside, which is always on the even numbered rows, and the right side or the outside is on the odd numbered rows. So here we have where I marked the right side of the work. There it is. Okay, now for our repeat row. Here we go. Chain 3 and turn. 2 double crochets in that beginning first double crochet, and now we are going to work 1 double crochet in each double crochet up to our shell. Okay. 1 double crochet in each. And now we have our shell, the 2 double crochets, chain 1, 2 double crochets. So work 1 shell in the chain 1 space of the next 2 shells. One, and the second shell. Okay. And now we're up to the increase section. You can see now we started with the 3 in the increase section. Now we have 4. So we're going to add 1 more. That'll give us 5 in this section. Okay. Up to the stitch marker, place 2 double crochets in that first marked stitch. Put your stitch marker back in the first of the 2, and now place 1 double crochet in each double crochet up to the next shell. And on this row we have the 4 total we've worked into. With our increase gives us now 5 double crochets. Let's see how this is growing. All right, now we go over to the shell, work a shell in the chain 1 space of this next shell. Okay, so here we are to our next increase, our marked stitch. So place 2 double crochets in that second marked stitch. Place the stitch marker back in the first of the 2 you just made, and again 1 double crochet in each double crochet up to the next shell. Place 1 shell in the chain 1 space of the next 2 shells, going across your center back. So we've worked these 2 increases along the right side of center. Now we're going to work the 2 center shells. One, there's the second. So our shells always remain the same. We always have 8 shells going across the entire piece, and the work grows in the increases of the double crochets in between, and then we have the 2 together in the center. Okay, and here we are now working into the left side of center. So we're skipping the last 2 double crochets of the shell. Again, don't mistake those as independent double crochets. Those belong to the shell. Skip over those. Work 1 double crochet in each double crochet up to the next marked stitch. Two double crochets in that marked stitch, and again place your stitch marker into that second double crochet you just made, now on the left side of center. Okay, here we are up to another shell. I'll work a shell in the chain 1 space of that shell. Which brings us to our second increase section to the left of center. Again, work 1 double crochet in each double crochet up to your next stitch marker, your last stitch marker rather, and place 2 double crochets in that marked stitch. with your stitch marker in the second double crochet you just made. And now you have the last 2 shells on the left side. Work 1 shell in the chain 1 space of each of the next 2. One and 2. And now skip over the last 2 double crochets of that last shell. Work 1 double crochet in each remaining double crochet and place 3 double crochets in the last, which is the top of your turning chain 3. And 2 and 3. Okay, that completes row 7, which is our repeat row. I'm going to show you real quick, just kind of go over that with you, and then show you the my worked up piece too, so you have a visual again of how that is supposed to look. All right, so we're going to go ahead. Repeat, you chain 3 and turn. Okay, you place 3 double crochets as always in that same beginning stitch, 1 double crochet in each stitch across up to your first shell. Then you place a shell in the chain 1 space of each of the next 2 shells. Brings you up to your increase. Work your increase as always, 2 on the first. Make sure you place your stitch marker back in the first of those 2 you just made. Then place 1 double crochet in each double crochet up to your next shell. Work a shell in the chain 1 space of that shell. Work your next increase sequence, your next 2 shells, and then now, see, that's your center. You can see this starting to take shape already. Now you are to the left of center, so you work your increase, and again in the reverse order. You work your individual double crochets first, 1 in each of the next double crochet across up to your next marked stitch, 2 in the next. Make sure you place your stitch markers on the left side of center in the second stitch that you just made. Work your shell in the chain 1 space of your next shell. Work the second and last increase on the left of center, repeating the sequence you just did here. Okay, make sure you place the last stitch marker into that second double crochet. Work your 2 shells and then 1 double crochet in each remaining double crochet across, and place your 3 double crochets in the top of your turning chain 3. That's all you work over and over, ending on the wrong side of your work and leaving some room for your border. Okay, well, I am going to work mine up. I will see you back at the end and we will work that border together. Have fun, and I hope you enjoy this as much as I am. I'm back and we're ready to do our easy 5-row border. I brought out a small sample for this in a lighter color, thinking it would be easier for you to see instead of the 2 darker colors I used in the lovely arcane fibers. You can take your stitch markers out now, except for leaving the marker in that marks the right side of our work. I would leave that in. You can take the rest out. We are not going to do any more of these increases, a little something different, but keep your stitch markers handy set aside because we'll need 3 of those for the next row. All right, reset your row counter if you're using one. We're going to begin a new row count with the border, beginning with row 1. You ended on the wrong side of your work. Okay, Hopefully you did that. Ended on the wrong side of your work for your last shell row. And now we're going to work a series of double crochets with some decreases around the shells just to even that edge up all the way across. To begin, chain 3 counts as your first double crochet and turn. Place 2 more double crochets in that same beginning stitch, and now just place 1 double crochet in each stitch across up to your first shell, not into, just up to your shell. 1 double crochet in each across. I will meet you there. And now when you get to your shell, this is what we're going to do for each shell all the way across. Place 1 double crochet in the first double crochet of the shell, and now we're going to crochet together the next double crochet and the chain 1 space. Yarn over, insert your hook into that second double crochet, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through the first 2. Now yarn over again, insert your hook into the chain 1 space, pull up a loop, and make sure all those loops are nice and tall to the rest of the height as those on your hook. Now pull through the first 2, yarn over, pull through all 3, and that is crocheting the 2 together, which now counts as 1 stitch. Then place 1 double crochet in each of the last 2 double crochets of your shell. And now here we are up to a second shell, and we're going to do the exact same thing. Double crochet in the first double crochet of the shell, double crochet the next 2 together, the second double crochet and the chain 1 space, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop. You have 3 on your hook, yarn over, pull through the first 2, yarn over, insert your hook into the chain 1 space and pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops on your hook, and then go ahead and place 1 double crochet in each of the last 2 double crochets of the shell. Then you work 1 double crochet in each double crochet along the next panel where you have your fanned out increase. You come up to your next shell, you work across just as we did the first 2 shells, and you repeat the same sequence all the way across, and remember, no more increases along these panels. Okay, 1 double crochet all the way across each section, working the shells as I showed you, and then you continue with the last double crochets, 1 in each along this edge, with 3 double crochets in the last, which is the top of your turning chain 3. Okay, and I will meet you at the end of row, that's row 1, almost said row 2. I will meet you there at the end of row 1. Okay, so now for row 2, you need to count your stitches all the way across except for 1 at each end, which will be on one side, your chain 3. That was your first double crochet and your end double crochet. So don't count these 2, but count every double crochet across, and when you come up to your shells where you double crocheted those 2 together, make sure you count this as 1 stitch only at the top and not these 2 you crocheted together as 2 separate stitches, because that'll mess you up. Okay, so those 2 together count as 1 stitch. And I know that's not fun, counting all those stitches across that whole stretch of your shawl, but it's very important that you have the correct stitch count that's going to set us up for all of our other rows going forward. Okay, so what you should have is a number that is evenly divisible by 4. So take whatever your stitch count is, divide it by 4, and make sure it divides out evenly. So say it's 56, not 56.5, but 56. It has to be a whole number with nothing left over. All right. Before we get started with row 2, grab 3 stitch markers. That's going to be for one of each of the 3 increases we'll be putting in on this row. That's going to bring us up to an odd number and give us an extra repeat set so that our final scalloped edge row comes out nice and even and the scallops are on each end. All right, so take your work in front of you and go to the very center of your shawl where you have the 2 sets of shells that run right down the middle. And just bring that up, take a look at it, and just going to find that double crochet that looks to be right in the center of those two sets and pop 1 stitch marker in there. All right, and then now go to one far end of, or the other, doesn't matter, and your very first increase section, which I am going to call a panel as they fan out and increase, that begins at one end up to your first set of shells. Place 1 stitch marker approximately in the center. It doesn't have to be exact because it's all going to even out equally, and you are working with a much wider space, so you can either eyeball that or you can fold the end over to where it meets the shell, and this just bring your piece in a little and that'll just guide you right to about the center. All right, so pop a stitch marker there, and again yours is going to be much wider, so yours will be somewhere in here. Okay, and then do the same on the other end. The first panel or increase section on the other end, again about halfway in between the edge and your first set of shells going in. Okay, so that looks about right, somewhere in there. Looks pretty good, one or the other, doesn't really matter. Okay, so now you're set up for row 2, which begins with a chain 1, and that does not count as a stitch. Turn your work and place 3 single crochets this time in that beginning double crochet. And if you have a harder time locating your first stitch, you can certainly place a stitch marker in that first single crochet to help you out. All right, now just place 1 single crochet in each double crochet all the way up to the first of your 3 stitch markers. Super easy, right? And place 2 single crochets in that marked stitch. All right, you can take the stitch marker out now. And now you work all the rest the same. 1 single crochet in each double crochet, and make sure when you come up to the 2 together, 2 double crochets together, you are just working into the top of that stitch as 1. All right, so 1 single crochet in each across up to your next stitch marker. Place 2 single crochets in that marked stitch, and again 1 single crochet in each around to the next stitch marker, 2 single crochets in that marked stitch, 1 single crochet in each double crochet up to the last, which is your turning chain 3, and place 3 single crochets in that top chain, and I will see you there. Now for row 3, chain 3 as your first double crochet and turn, 2 more double crochets in your beginning single crochet. Now the sequence we're going to work across, your repeat sequence, chain 2, skip the next 2 single crochets and 2 double crochets in the next. Okay. Again, chain 2, skip the next 2 single crochets and 2 double crochets in the next. And that's what you repeat all the way across. Okay, chain 2, skip 2, 2 double crochets in the next, all the way to the other side. And when you come up on your last 3 stitches, you will chain 2, skip the next 2, and place 3 double crochets in the very last single crochet, just like we did with our first. Okay, and I will see you at this end. Back at the end of row 3, and now moving on to row 4, our second to last row. All right, this is a super easy one too. Okay, to begin, this time we're going to chain 1 again and turn, and that chain does not count as a stitch. Place 1 single crochet in your beginning double crochet. Okay, chain 3, skip the next 2 double crochets and place 1 single crochet in the chain 1 space. And if you want to get that single crochet placed in the center, so where you don't have to scooch it over later to even them out, when you go in to work your single crochet, I just kind of grip the stitches to the left and right of that and pinch that off at the top, place my single crochet, and it puts it right in the center. All right, so now you chain 3 again, single crochet in the next chain 2 space, and that is all you do all the way across. Chain 3, single crochet in the next chain 2 space, chain 3, single crochet in the next chain 2 space. All right, so work that, repeat all the way around to the end, and I will meet you after you finish your last chain 2 space, and we'll work the little end together. I'm back at the end of row 4. That one sure goes fast, always nice. All right, I've worked my single crochet in the last chain 2 space, and now to finish, chain 3 one more time, skip the next 2 double crochets and work 1 single crochet in the top of your turning chain 3. And now for row 5, yay, our final row. Okay, chain 1 again does not count as a stitch, and turn 1 single crochet in the beginning single crochet. And now in the first chain 3 space, place 6 double crochets, 6 all into the chain 3 space. Okay, skip the next single crochet and single crochet in the next chain 3 space, and that is going to be your repeat sequence. And again, placing the single crochet in the center, I just pinch the 2 sides together as I'm working that stitch to make sure it gets anchored to the center. All right, skip the next single crochet, 6 double crochets in the next, skip the next single crochet, 1 single crochet in the next chain 3 space. Okay, and then your repeat is the 6 double crochets in the next chain 3 space, single crochet in the next, 6 double crochets in the next, single crochet in the next. All right, and that is your repeat sequence. You skip over the next single crochet, place 6 double crochets in the next chain 3 space, 1 double crochet in the next chain 3 space, 6 double crochets in the next one in the next, and that's your repeat all the way across, and you will end with 6 double crochets in the last chain 3 space and place 1 single crochet in the very last single crochet at the end. It's a little, kind of squished down there, but it's there, and that is it. All right, so I'm going to finish this sample piece and I will meet you at the end, and then we'll go over a little bit of blocking tips for this piece, which may vary depending on the type of yarn that you use and how it acts with the stitches. So I will go over that with you, and then also how I sew end my beginning tail so that it just blends really nicely and creates more of a transitional curved shape like we have on the other side. All right, so I'll see you at the end of row 5. I'm back at the end of row 5. Thought I would just work this little last bit with you. Okay, so I put my last single crochet in the chain 3 space, which leaves 1 more chain 3 space. So that's where I put my last 6 double crochets. Okay, and then now the single crochet in the single crochet. You can go ahead, cut your yarn. You can yarn over, put in a little knot there, if you like to lock that in, and then cut your yarn. And when I sew in my end, I just tuck that to the back, I hide that knot and blend it as best as I can. All right, so now here's the finished sample piece. All right, and if yours is curling just a little bit, that is just how the nature of these stitches kind of wound up because of the chain 3 space below. And I tried it adding an extra chain for a little bit of an increase. That actually made it worse, because after from the border forward, the increases are actually built into the stitch pattern themselves. Like this row with the 2 double crochet, that is actually an increase row. So I'm going to show you how I blocked it. Just in super simple, just takes a little bit of time to do that. With just a bottle of water and misted it. I didn't need to pin this or anything, and as you could see from this piece at the beginning, it just lays really nicely. It doesn't curl at all, and that's all it took. And at the beginning, this one curled too, just like this piece. And as far as this little tail end goes, just to get a nice smooth transition from the tail into the work, I just took my yarn needle, brought it through to one of the closer back stitches, down and then up through and underneath the stitch to the right of it, and then over to the next stitch to the right and the back, and then weaved it back up to where I began and then down. And that just helps to anchor that tail down in there and just round this edge out just a little bit to resemble the other side even more. But I think it still looks pretty even as it is. All right, so let's go over to my counter. I'll go over the blocking with you, and then we'll call it a day. And fortunately, we have a nice long island in the kitchen, perfect for blocking pieces. But any clean flat surface will do, whether it be countertop, dining room table, even your bed. And just be sure you do it at the time of the day that you can leave your piece on long enough to dry. But normally, I would block on the wrong side of the work. This is on the wrong side now, but I started on the right side because we ended on the wrong side with our shell stitches in the body of the work. Every other row, the wrong side row, gives you some nice raised stitches. But because then we go into the border, I noticed that it pulled in the first row of the border a little bit, and these stitches are stuck out curved over a little bit, at least with mine. So I started on the right side of the work and I misted a little bit each shell section all the way around. And then once they were dampened, I just tapped them down a little bit. I didn't want to flatten them all the way and squish them and make them flat and take all of that texture out, but just enough to lay flush with the connection, the edge going into the first double crochet row of the border here. And then also I would take my fingers and just relax and separate those stitches a little bit so they did not draw the work in where we double crocheted the two together, right? And then I waited a few minutes and let that settle in, and then I came back once it was semi-dry, about halfway, and I flipped it over so the whole piece now is on the wrong side of the work. And I just missed it as I went along. And what I did really to start is the two shells, sets of shells that run right down the center. I use those as my starting point. And then I misted the entire piece with water. And I didn't want to stretch my stitches out, but I would just tap, tap, tap very gently one way. And really with both hands, I would do like a fanning motion where I'd have one hand one way, one the other, and just spread them out a little bit. And another way, good thing you can do, is use these two double crochets in the same stitch to line up. And I had those going in the direction that each panel goes in. So they angle, and then I would just follow along with these stitches and move them so they went straight and in line and curved around just as each panel curves around. Then at the very end, I walk around the piece, and you don't have to do this, but that's just how I am, that I just look at all different angles, because it's like sometimes going into a store, you walk down one aisle and you see some things that you don't notice, and then you walk down the aisle again in the other direction, and then other things jump out at you. So that's how I approach all of my blocking. And then I would do the same for the neckline. I would take a look at that and make sure it wasn't stretched out or in a direction that looked kind of weird, and that it was all in line together. I worked my way down to the border, and then focusing on the double crochet and single crochet, making sure that the line is nice and curved and even as we go along. Then when I get down to the very bottom, the scalloped edge, these tend to curl inward a little bit on the front side. So when I misted the bottom scalloped edge, then again on this portion here where you crochet, double crochet around that chain, I pressed that down just a little bit. And then I would gently take my fingers along the edge, not to turn it up where it sticks up, to just give it a little tap, tap as I go so that it did not curl under. And then lastly, I went around and want to make sure that the spaces in the center of the shell where you worked the chain and it made that space here, that each one were pretty evenly spaced out. And I would either bring one down a little bit if it needed to, or push one back in a little bit. So that way, when it dries, it's going to create the shape and all be pretty uniform. Because I figure I spent all that time making this piece, why not spend an extra, 15 minutes, just reshaping it a little bit, giving it a little extra love, and that's all you need to do to make it even that much nicer. Okay, my fiber friends, that's it for today. Thank you for being here, making my patterns. I appreciate that, and you so very much. Take good care, be safe, stay well. Hope to see you next time. All right, and until then, bye for now.